All right, we are live. Welcome to another episode of the 49ers Rush podcast. I'm your host, John Chapman, and today is for the hardcore fans. What we're going to be doing today, we are going to be breaking down in depth everything you ever wanted to know, and probably a lot more, about the 49ers defensive win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, if you are one of those offensive fantasy football people, that's okay. We still love you. We covered that in yesterday's podcast. So if you want to pause this and go listen to that one first, we answered a lot of questions there as well. But today, what we're going to do is we're going to attempt to focus almost all of our efforts on the defensive side, go through drive charts, how that panned out, total snap counts, who played well, who played bad, just go through it all. Coverage, missed tackles, all those fun things. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And we even have some new news out. So practice today, we had a press conference earlier today with Kyle Shanahan, and he was able to give us a lot more information just on what's going on with some injury updates and things like that. So if you are joining us live, I do want to say thank you. Really appreciate it. And if you have a question, please just throw that in the chat. Just make sure that you at me, at John Chapman. That way I can see it, because the last couple times we've gone live, which has been an absolute blast, there's a lot of comments on there, and I want to make sure I focus on the content. So if you have a direct question, just put at John Chapman on there, and we will go from there. So I want to make sure that we cover everything that you guys want today. So if you have any questions, just throw that in there. So let's start with some practice updates and just some more relevant news from what's going on today. A couple things. Number one, Nick Bosa did not practice today. And whenever I say today, I'm talking about Wednesday. This was the first practice in Youngstown. The 49ers chose to stay on the East Coast or East Standard time zone. They're in Ohio at Youngstown State, and which is really unique. A lot of teams want to come back home, rest, then go back. But before this week one win, the 49ers were 0-12 when traveling to the East Coast in their last 12 games. So we're trying to buck that trend and just stay out there for a full week. That way the players don't have to adjust to the early kickoff again, because this is a super early kickoff, 10 a.m. our time on Sunday versus the Bengals. Our next episode will be a complete scouting report on them. I've got a lot of film to do on them. I know it's just one game, but Kyle Shanahan even alluded to this. He was asked today, what does Zach Taylor and the Bengals do, who had a hell of a game against the Seattle Seahawks? They should have won that game. But he said, they do basically everything that the LA Rams do. So we are very familiar with that scheme and that system. That's going to be quite interesting. So back to the news. Nick Bosa, he did not practice today, and the idea was that his ankle soreness returned, which is scary to say the least. But if he's going to play that well, we don't have to worry. And we'll get into the starters and all that stuff. But Nick Bosa played 38 snaps to Dee Ford's 40 snaps. So it's not like he was on near as much of a snap count limit as we initially thought he was. They still do think that he will be playing this week, no problem. But if Nick Bosa could come out and play that well, he had 6 pressures by himself, 7th best in the NFL after week one. There are a few people tied with 7 above him, but the dude just totally balled out. Jimmy Ward was out there today in a blue non-contact jersey. He's got a cast on his hand, so it seems like he will be able to play. But again, Kyle Shanahan said it's 100% an injury thing. You don't have to worry about a cast on the hand with tackling, usually on the defensive side, but you do have to worry about with interceptions or trying to catch the ball and things like that. So that's problematic, but we'll just kind of have to see what's going on there. I do think that he will play. Now, the question is, why rush him back if he's not going to be starting? And I don't think that he will. Tarvarius Moore put in a very solid game. I think you want to stay with what he's got going on. But dress Jimmy Ward, because, again, he would probably be the first in at either safety position, which is huge. Joe Staley got a vet day off. Get used to that. I doubt he will practice any first day throughout the entire season. I just don't think that's going to be an issue. Then Jalen Hurd, Trent Taylor, both absent as well. And some good news, Dante Pettis was an absolute full go today. And he was even brought up. A question was asked. Again, we're going to get to defense, but a question was asked: Did you mean to get Deebo Samuel that many snaps? Because he took the most snaps of all wide receivers. And Kyle Shanahan said, "Yeah, I think we gave him too many. I wish that we could have taken some of those away and got Dante in there." But he did mention a few days before, after the game, that Dante didn't practice all week and his groin issue. I think it's going to kind of level out instead of Debo Samuel getting, almost 60 snaps. You could see that down closer to 40 to 45, and Dante Pettis' snaps would take a, jump up to 20 to 25. That's just my early prediction. We'll see. I've been wrong on Dante Pettis, so who knows how that's going to go. But moving back up, we've got just a couple other things. Nzocha left practice with an illness today, so that's an interesting one. Not huge pivotal, but he's coming off an awesome game. Hopefully he gets some rest. And that's kind of where we're at as far as the imperative points that came out of the press conference. So a couple things real quick before we jump into the defensive side. I want to make sure I give a shout out to Game Day Sports and Memorabilia. These guys are absolutely awesome. They gave us the George Kittle jersey, and a lot of you guys that have already been following me. I really do appreciate it. A way that we can bring some more attention to this podcast is by making sure we spend time on Twitter and tweet that out. That's the whole goal of this. We want to bring Game Day Sports and Memorabilia some more business, and they gave us an autographed solid red George Kittle authentic jersey. It's so badass, and it's free. All you have to do is head over to my Twitter account at JL_Chapman. It is the pinned tweet on there. So go ahead and retweet that, and it will give you just a couple of things on there to do. All you have to do is follow this YouTube account, which if you're already doing, I appreciate it, and the Eat Sleep Fantasy account as well. So that's what you got to do on there. So head over there, Game Day Sports and Memorabilia. They have all of your memorabilia needs taken care of, and about 20 pages of just 49er stuff. So if you got a birthday coming up, mine's coming up this weekend. What? And if you want something, and I get it, man. I'm getting old. I'm 37, going to be 37. And my wife keeps asking me, what do you want? What do you want? I'm just like, I don't want anything. I don't want anything. I just started asking for 49er stuff. So that's a great place to head over there too. Now, let's jump over and just a couple quick questions real quick. John, what rank QB do you have Jimmy G finishing this year? If you're talking fantasy-wise, I think that he will be close to that 10 to 15 range. He's just got to fix his touchdowns. He's way off on getting actually into the end zone. That's always been the concern for Kyle Shanahan quarterbacks. But yards, he's going to be around that 5 to 7. Passing yards will come. They will be there. As far as NFL quarterbacks, I think he's hovering around that 8 to 12 range as of now, and that's fine. I do believe that he is better than half the league with so much upside. It would not surprise me, if you jump up 3 to 4 years from now, whenever, guys like Drew Brees and Roethlisberger and, Phillip Rivers and those guys are out, he's going to be a top 5 quarterback. I really do believe that he can. So let's do this. Let's jump into the defense. Again, in the live reaction show after the game, which if you are on my YouTube page, it's already set up. So go ahead and hit the notification on there so that when the game is over and we beat the Bengals week 2, you can join us and let's have a lot of fun just breaking down that game. But the MVP is Ahkello Witherspoon. He was absolutely incredible. He has been very, very up and down. But we saw this early last year as well. When he is healthy and playing with confidence, he can do amazing things. He was absolutely unbelievable. And as long as he's playing that way and they're going to keep targeting Sherman like what we saw this week, then holy freaking cow, we are going to have a very stout defense. So let's jump in real quick. We're going to go through the starters, who were out there first, snap counts, and all those things. Then we'll get into top 5 defensive players, bottom 5 defensive players. And if you have a question, just throw that up on there. So defensive line up front, pretty standard. The defensive left side, we had Eric Armstead at end. We had DeForest Buckner at defensive tackle, DJ Jones at defensive tackle, and then D Ford as the right end. So those were our up front guys. We came out in a standard kind of 4-3 traditional setup. We weren't in our nickel package. We had 3 linebackers, Dre Greenlaw, Fred Warner, Quan Alexander, and Dre Greenlaw got a lot of snaps. He got 56 out of a possible 69 snaps. So he was out there a lot more than we wanted him to be once Quan got ejected. But still, Dre played pretty well. He had a better rating than any other linebacker out there, and we'll get to that in a second. And the secondary, it didn't change at all. Our 4 starters played every single snap. Richard Sherman, left corner, Tarvarius Moore, free safety, Tart, strong safety, and Witherspoon, our right cornerback. And the slot snaps, the slot or nickel corner, were completely divided between Quan Williams, who went out there first, and Emmanuel Mosley. So Quan got 23 snaps and Mosley got 22. So you could see there, like, this is kind of what it's going to be. Dime package, which we didn't see a lot because OJ Howard's just such a stud. They keep him out there for a lot of the snaps, and he's not going to go anywhere. So because of that, we didn't really utilize a whole lot of dime packages. Next week's going to be the exact opposite. They like to air it out in Cincinnati again. I'm going to do a whole nother breakdown, a whole episode. I don't feel confident talking a lot about that game right now just because I need to watch some more film. So question right here. John, when do you think Verrett will play? Well, if Witherspoon keeps doing what he's doing, he's going to be the first backup cornerback. So as of right now, we have a lot of depth at corner, whether that's inside or outside. DJ Reed didn't get one snap in this game defensively. That should tell you about the depth on the inside with Kawan and Mosley. And we didn't even have Jimmy Ward, who is also a backup nickel guy. So now if Jimmy is healthy, that's going to put us too deep at every single position in the secondary because Verrett will be the backup for either outside corner, and that is not a step down. It is quite possible that if he is healthy, which we don't want to rush him back off that ankle sprain anyway, but it seems like he was inactive last week. As soon as he's ready, he will be active. I'll tell you that right now, but it's quite possible our best corners are backup right now. And that's not a knock on Sherman. That's not a knock on Witherspoon. But the ceiling of Verrett, whenever he played, he was close to an all-pro corner. So interesting to watch. Why do you think Buckner didn't do well last game? I don't know. He was double-teamed a whole lot. And whenever he was in there, he was double-teamed. But that's never stopped him in the past. And you could make the argument a big reason why we were able to generate so much pass pressure, Alvin, is everybody else was in one-on-one matchups. And so if that's going to be the case, you got to win your one-on-one matchups. And I think that's usually what happens. So Nick Bosa, snap counts again, as we said, 38 snaps. He played out of his mind. Julian Taylor got 6. And the sad thing is, man, we put Julian Taylor in there, the most pivotal point of the game. We go put him in there, and he did not play well. He looked pretty bad. But I'm glad to see him get some rotation, just not in the fourth quarter when you're down, when you're up 6 on the most important drive of the game. It does show you how much this coaching staff believes in their players, which is wonderful. But that's probably not the time to have your third string defensive lineman in there. We're looking out there, and it was a long drive, so I get it. And we're really big on making sure we are not over getting snaps over, especially on the defensive line. Buckner got the most snaps up front with 52, again, out of 69. So they're rotating a lot. But damn, we were out there on 3rd and 1, and they had good old Solomon Thomas and Julian Taylor out there. That is just not a good formation, and they took advantage of it. They drove it right down their throats. Now, let's take a break real quick. Let's look at the top 5 Pro Football Focus grades, and I do like their defensive grades. Now, here's the things you have to understand. They take off a whole bunch of points for penalties. So if you get a lot of penalties, you just got to understand this is going to be on you. So, and we did have a whole bunch. Richard Sherman got 3 penalties. That's gigantic. So he's going to get docked tremendously. So just keep that in mind. Understand, yes, he did have a pick 6. Yes, he was amazing. He did not grade out well. So the top player was Witherspoon with an 80.8, and right behind him was Nick Bosa, 80.5. Again, Nick Bosa was just unbelievable with 6 total pressures, 2 quarterback hits. He had a sack and a half. It's weird. Officially, he only registered 1 sack, but it was a sack and a half. I don't care what anybody else says. Drake Greenlaw finished 3rd with a 75.7 grade. Mark Nazocha with the punt block and the interception and an additional 2 tackles. Just had a great game in a limited number of snaps, 73.5. And D Ford, he came in at 5th with 70.8. He had that strip sack again. Also came out back with another quarterback hurry and another quarterback hit. So great game there. Now, if we look at the flip side, it's about to get dark. Quan Alexander was graded as the worst player according to Pro Football Focus. Now, hold on for a second. And here are the reasons why. He was targeted 3 times in the passing game. He gave up 2 catches. He was there both times and made decent tackles, but he had that huge penalty on a 3rd down, which they weigh heavily. He did not generate any pressures. And so even though he was out there for 20 snaps, half of which were in coverage, his value is definitely more than it shows. Should he have been ejected for that hit? Whatever. I don't want to get too much into that. I understand protecting the players, and you've got to do what's right to make sure that people won't turn off the sport. I think the only way that people will stop watching football is if really bad injuries happen on camera involving the head and or neck. So I get it. I 100% get it. He's the first player ejected because of this new rule. There were other people ejected. There was somebody else ejected. Miles Jack was ejected earlier in the game, but it wasn't for the helmet-to-helmet contact. He threw a punch like a moron. But so technically, Quan Alexander is going down in history books as the first player ever ejected in an NFL game for the helmet-to-helmet hit. We see what you got to do. And the coaching staff, they kind of showed us what they believe here, because they gave the game ball to Quan Alexander in the locker room with the awesome speech. That was awesome. And Quan Alexander is turning into kind of the energy and or heartbeat of this defense. You have Fred Warner, who's a little bit more quiet, and he is the captain of the defense. There's no doubt about that. But then if you look at kind of the emotional energy, you've definitely got Sherman on the back end. Now you have Quan up front, and there's, in that front 7, and none of the D linemen are really like super loud guys. DeForest Buckner, very quiet and reserved. Eric Armstead, quiet, reserved. Nick Bosa, quiet, reserved. Even D Ford, for a large extent, he's not like a loud up in your face guy. So Quan Alexander is the guy that's going to bring kind of that energy up front, that front 7, and the team feeds off that. Which you got to have those type of attitudes on a team for cohesiveness and to help you get up whenever you're not up, because there's going to be long drives where the defense is going to be exhausted and tired, backs against the wall. You need those guys to step up and kind of rile everybody up whenever that happens. So next question from Josh real quick. Would you keep Moore over a healthy Ward? Hell yes. That is an absolute yes. And the main reason why is the ceiling. You can make the argument, and it'd be a solid one, that perhaps Jimmy Ward is better than Tarvarius Moore now, that he's a little bit safer of a play. I don't want safe there. I believe that Ward is barely above replacement level safety, and especially whenever you look at his health, that's a huge thing. Tarvarius Moore has all of the capabilities to be an amazing safety in the NFL. Because of that, you go upside. And plus, he's played one game. He played pretty damn good. So jumping back real quick, Solomon Thomas was the second worst player, 39.1. And here's the deal. Okay, let me take a deep breath here, because I know I talk about Solomon Thomas a lot. And, I even put out the Twitter poll before the season, and I said, are they going to continue to play him out of position at the defensive end position without moving him inside? And the poll was over 70% saying, no, they're going to move him back inside. And they did not. He only had 12 total snaps, and they were all bad. He jumped off sides on a crucial 3rd down. He just generated 0 pressures. He's just a waste. And I hate to say it, but I think it's officially time to say Solomon Thomas is a bust in our system. I really wish we would trade this guy to somebody that knows what the hell they're doing with this player. He does not ever in the history of the rest of his life need to take an outside snap again on the defensive side. And the sad thing is, I love the kid, and I think that he can play in the NFL, and I think he can be a decent player, but not at defensive end, especially not at a 4-3 defensive end. He has 0 edge presence, and he cannot bend the edge whatsoever. He is still running head up into the offensive tackle every single pass play, which he was only out there for 5 pass plays, and he dropped in coverage once. So we're still dropping Solomon Thomas, who should be a defensive tackle, into coverage. Way to go, Robert Saleh. absolutely ludicrous, insane. And I understand our defense is improved, and I like Robert Saleh, and I'm glad that he is our defensive coordinator. But this is asinine, stupid behavior, and you're ruining this kid's career. So I really do hope that we trade him for anything. He doesn't need to get any more snaps on our defense whatsoever. Especially at defensive end. Move him inside or stop playing him. It's absolutely ridiculous. Sheldon Day, he was the third worst player, 45 grade on there. He just gets moved off the ball. Sheldon Day is great whenever it's a pass rush situation. He was out there for 13 pass rush snaps and 4 defensive rush snaps. And whenever they were rushing the ball, man, you just see him get moved backwards. And you can't do that whenever you're anchoring the defensive front. Richard Sherman, as I said earlier, he ranked fourth worst with a 48.5. A lot of that just had to do with all of the penalties. I'll get into targets and receptions and all that stuff. And then DeForest Buckner, he came in at fifth worst, and his tackling rate was great. It's just he got moved off of the ball, and they were running at him instead of away from him. We haven't seen that very much. And a lot of the biggest runs up the middle in the second half, whenever the Bucs switched their running back, it was right at DeForest Buckner. So just something to pay attention to. You don't want to put too much stock into the Pro Football Focus grades, but it does help you kind of see what's going on there, and so you want to see what's going on, but it's what it is. So let's move on real quick. I want to talk about some things that we did right. And probably the number one thing that this team did was getting pressure on the quarterback. The NFL, they put out the defensive pressure rate of each team in week 1, and the 49ers came in 5th place of the NFL, generating pressure on 40.5% of snaps. Now, what's interesting, and this is going to be a lot of fun, is the Bengals ranked number 1 in the NFL with 50% against, again, the Seattle Seahawks. They have one of the worst offensive lines. They have a great left tackle in Dwayne Brown. Outside of that, their offensive line is absolutely just trash. I almost said the word abysmal, but if you read the comments, apparently abysmal is my word that I use a lot. So I'm going to try to move away from saying abysmal, even though I just said it 3 more times. Just throwing a little love out there. Hopefully some people are like, man, what the hell? But whatever. So the 49ers and Bengals, both in top 5 as amongst pressures last week. But here's the craziest thing. The lowest pressure allowed, 49ers were second. The Bucs only generated 10.7% pressure against us on the opposing side. So when we're top 5 and we're getting 40% of pressure and we're only allowing 10%, Jimmy Garoppolo only got hit 1 time, and that was his sack. Outside of that, he was hurried twice. That was it. So when your quarterback can stand up and not be threatened, he's going to have a decent game, and you're going to move the field. You're going to move the ball. Now, the issue is whenever you're hitting their quarterback so much, that's where turnovers come from, which we saw. I think these numbers will return a little bit more pedestrian, but man, that Bengals offensive line, it's awful as well. We're playing against a lot of really poor offensive lines. And so as long as that's going to be the case, I think we're going to continue to be living in the backfield, which is what we want, and the funny thing is, we look at these total 19 pressures that the 49ers had. That is a lot, considering the Bucs only got 3 total pressures. So Nick Bosa led the way with 6 total pressures. He had 2 sacks, according to Pro Football Focus, 2 quarterback hits, and 2 hurries. The guy was just all over the place. He did miss 1 tackle in the run game, but he did have 2 solo stops. Just played absolutely unbelievable. Look for that role to continue exactly as it was this week, where he's not out there as a quote-unquote starter, but he's getting starter snaps. Our defensive line is going to rotate like crazy. Eric Armstead got 3 total pressures as well, 1 sack, 2 hurries. D Ford, 3 total pressures, 1 sack, 1 hit, 1 hurry. Also a batted pass and a forced fumble on that strip sack. Again, we had 9 total pressures just from those 2 additions. And you want to know what difference 2 guys can make? 9 pressures between the two of them. That is unbelievable. You took our biggest weakness last year and you turned it into a strength. That is awesome. DJ Jones got 2 pressures, which is amazing for our interior guy. He got more than Sheldon Day. So I would really like DJ Jones snaps to go up some. I really would. Tart got 2 on pressures whenever he was blitzing off the edge. Ronald Blair got 1 as well. Sheldon Day 1, and DeForest Buckner only got 1. So that's key there. Now, tackling was a major issue. We had 9 missed tackles. I hate this, man. One of the key problems and what's kind of frustrating about this coaching staff is that we struggle correcting behavior from previous years. We don't step in and change things. So red zone efficiency hasn't been improved. Now, we did draft to address that issue. Tackling was a major issue. We don't really draft solid tacklers. We draft scheme-specific height, weight guys, but not those type of traits, which is interesting. So now lots of missed tackles. Fred Warner, 2 missed tackles. Tarvarius Moore, 2 missed tackles. He likes to come in and lower his shoulder. You cannot do that. You just can't do it. Quan Williams, 2 missed tackles. Bosa had 1. Armstead had 1. And Richard Sherman had 1 as well. So you look at these kind of numbers and where we're at, and it's interesting. What do we do with this? Because we haven't fixed it, and it's the NFL. You can't practice tackling. It's just one of those things that has to get better. And so it's interesting to say the least. Yeah, I really do wish we would correct that. Now, before we get into the secondary and targets and all those things, I do want to say thanks to our sponsor, mybookie.ag, mybookie.ag. That was fun to spell out. Dyslexia is hard to do that with, but MyBookie makes it easy. Here's the best thing about these guys. If you bet with us last week, you won, which was a lot of fun. The 49ers are 1.5-point underdogs already this week, which is quite interesting. I do understand that the Bengals played very well against Seattle and should have won last week. We'll break that game down next episode a little more. But usually the home team gets 3 points. So technically, if this was on a neutral field, the 49ers would be favored by 1.5. But you're going to give me points against one of the worst offensive lines and worst defenses in the NFL. Holy cow, I love that. Whenever they released the schedule, we jumped on these 2 games and we said, man, if we could start 2-0 on the road, watch out. Because after that, we've got a little bit of leeway. And we didn't win 1 road game last year. We've already got 1 road win under our belt. So head over to mybookie.ag, use the promo code 49ers, 49ERS. They're going to double your initial deposit. And I know a lot of you guys have already reached out and signed up, and I appreciate that. That does help the podcast out very, very much. So head over there. They double whatever it is your initial deposit, and then you go from there. You win, you bet, you win, you get paid. It's super easy. Get money in and out at any time that you want to, and you can bet on literally everything. So just want to say thanks to those guys. Real quick, this is an offensive question, I believe. John, how do we improve our run game? Man, our run game's going to get better. I'm not really stressed about that. We were playing against 2 of the best run-stuffing nose defensive tackles in the NFL, in Vita Vea and in Ndamukong Suh, with one of the most talented rookie linebackers that we have seen in quite a long time. That's the one thing that they could do, is stop the run, and they did in the first half. And we exploited other parts of their game. I do think it will improve the defensive line group. Geno Atkins is amazing, but he's much more of a pass rusher. I do believe we're going to have a lot more success running the game, running the ball this week. And then he asked the question, who was better or worse, O-line or their D-line? Oh, our O-line played amazing. You have to give them credit. Were they missing their best pass rusher? Yes, they were. But anytime, I don't care if you're playing JV football, it doesn't matter. If your quarterback gets touched 1 time out the game, your O-line played amazing. So that's just what you got to do. You got to give a shout out to our offensive line. I know this is a defensive episode, but I love it. I absolutely love it. So let's move on now. Let's talk briefly about the secondary, because they played well. I challenge them like they listen. I said one of the biggest things is this wide receiver core is one of the better in the NFL, with OJ Howard, Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin, and we were able to answer the call. Now, Mike Evans was very, very sick. So I don't know how much you want to put on that, but he was blowing chunks on the sideline. That bug definitely got him, but I don't care. Our defense did their job. You don't pick who you play against, you pick how you play, and they answered. Now, the person that was targeted the most, they were definitely attacking the underneath part of our zone. Fred Warner had 12 targets. And a big reason why his grade wasn't as amazing as it was, he forced 2 fumbles. One of those didn't count because it was a stupid penalty, but whatever. He was targeted 12 times and allowed 9 catches. That's rough. He gave up over 100 yards receiving. He is amazing in the pass game or in the run game. If he can correct those missed tackles, then that's going to help a lot. He did get 1 pass breakup, which helped. But as a linebacker, you can't give up 9 catches and 100 yards. That's a lot of first downs that happen against him. Witherspoon was the next most targeted player. He had 6 targets, only allowed 2 catches for 21 yards. That's amazing as an outside corner, considering he got 2 pass breakups and a pick 6. So he had more, he got his hands on the ball more than the receiver he was guarding. Absolutely unbelievable, incredible game. I mean, that's the thing. He gave up 21 yards and no touchdown. He scored a touchdown on his own. The NFL passer rating when targeting Witherspoon, 4.9. 4.9, which is just bananas. Richard Sherman was targeted 5 times, gave up 3 catches, but again, 3 penalties. He did give up a touchdown as well. He had his interception and he got his hands on a pass breakup. So this is kind of who Sherman has always been. If you go back to the days with Seattle, he was amongst the lead in touchdowns allowed, but it's either going one way or it's going the other. Same thing with a guy like Marcus Peters. He wants to be challenged. He's going to stay on an island and do the best he can. But overall, if you could get a pick 6 out of it, this is a huge win for the defense. But he did give up a touchdown, and he did give up a lot. 3 penalties is a little much. We'll kind of have to see. It was an over penalty game, but Sherman's a physical corner. He's going to get a lot more defensive pass interference calls and defensive holding. That's just what it is. Quan Alexander was targeted 3 times, gave up 2 catches. Nothing too big there. Targeted 3 times, 2 catches, and a couple other ones, but that's kind of what we got there. So nothing too big there. And here's the deal. We had a great defensive performance. Anytime, they scored 17 points, 7 of those were on Jimmy G. So our defense realistically only gave up 10 points. And for a game that was projected to be close to 50, it was a 51-point over-under. Man, we were under. Only giving up 10 points on that is just gigantic. Real quick, let's see here. I just want to make sure I'm not missing any questions. John, you have a W for us this Sunday, correct? Yes, I do. I've already put down my bet on that. I wouldn't be surprised if the line moves. Again, I'll break down more of the game. As of right now, Joe Mixon, their star running back, is questionable. We assumed the ankle injury was going to knock him out a week or 2 or 3. It's looking like there's a small chance he can play, but at a running back, if I was the Bengals, I would sit him. You do not want to rush back your stud young running back early off an ankle injury. So even if he does play, it doesn't really move the needle very much for me. But ideally, from a 49ers perspective, yeah, you want him out. AJ Green is out of his walking boot and jogging on a treadmill. Doesn't matter. He will not be playing. I don't think that it's going to happen. So that's what that is. Let's see here. Any other questions? What's up, John? Hey, guys, really appreciate it. Just want to say, what's the word on Verrett? We still don't know much about him. I do believe they're not trying to rush him back because even if he is active, he will not take 1 snap during the game unless there's an injury to Witherspoon or to Sherman. So you're just trying to wait. You're trying to buy time to just let him rest. Because whenever he's full string, full healthy, you have a starting caliber outside cornerback just sitting on your bench. So anything for Trent Taylor, still a no. He did not practice today. Again, I'll go over this one more time as we're getting a lot more questions and you guys might have missed the first part. As far as today's practice, Nick Bosa did not practice. He had some soreness in the ankle after the game he did, so they're resting him there. Jimmy Ward was out there in a blue non-contact jersey. Joe Staley, another vet day. Jalen Hurd, Trent Taylor, both absent. Dante Pettis was a full go. I do expect Dante Pettis to get a lot more snaps going forward. So that's kind of where we are. Really appreciate it, guys. And again, couple things. If you have not already entered for the chance to win the George Kittle jersey, man, it's sweet. My son's new favorite player is George Kittle, my old one. And he's like, dude, can I just keep it? And I was like, dude, I'll just buy you one. But it's over $200+ over at Game Day Sports and Memorabilia. You have a chance to get it for free. Head over to my Twitter account at JL_Chapman. It's my pin tweet. Retweet that bad boy. Get entered. Win an awesome jersey. And I will be back with you guys very, very soon. I've got to watch a lot of film on the Bengals and let you know what we got to watch out for and where we can kind of take advantage of them, because this is going to be a fun game. They're not a bad team. They are very well coached up front from what I've seen so far. So we'll just see what happens. So until that time, stay strong, faithful. Really appreciate all the support.